start to the show once again. As we
maybe if you shut up on time,
I was here. The mics went on. I was here.
All right.
Ty Hildenbrandt, host of the Solid Verbal podcast, joins us now. Ty, I'm sorry for what you walked into. Me and my co-host fighting here a little bit. How are you today?
Good. I'm like Switzerland, guys. I don't want to pick a side. I don't want to be any part of that. I'm just here for the good times.
All right, here to talk some football. So let's talk some football.
If you're ever a co-host on a show and it starts at noon, get here before 11:59.
Okay, I'm going to write this down here.
Traffic.
Thank you.
Traffic, Ty, traffic. Anyway.
Yes, in the booming metropolis of Syracuse.
It's construction season here, so that's all I'm going to say. All right, awesome week one slate. So as you look at the schedule ahead, what do you have your eye on? What are you most interested in seeing this week?
Well, look, I mean, you got the obvious ones, right? You've got the Texas-Ohio State game, Alabama, Florida State, LSU, Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami. Those are like the big ones that I think everybody kind of is drawn to. But there's a lot of goodness, I'd say, below that top line. Another Sunday game that isn't being talked about enough, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, a very meaningful game for both of those programs. There's a game earlier in the week between Auburn and Baylor, which I think is going to be super significant for both of those sides. Georgia Tech, Colorado is another one on Friday night. That low point spread, people who maybe aren't fully in the know with what's going on with those programs, you might not think that it'd be that low, but there's reason for that. I think that's interesting. And obviously Bill Belichick playing his first game as a college coach on Monday night against TCU. So and it's not just those games, guys. I mean, I could list off a whole slew of them that I find interesting for one reason or another, but more to the point, yeah, we've got a loaded slate, 5 straight days of college football. I've already had that uncomfortable conversation with my wife. Like, yeah, I'm actually going to have to watch games for 5 straight days. Don't divorce me. So yeah, it's an exciting week, not just because football's starting, but because we've got so many games of really high quality.
Steve, if you're looking for something to listen to on Friday night, we have that Georgia Tech Colorado game right here on ESPN Radio.
All right. And, you mentioned Georgia Tech, Colorado. Let's play off of that for a second. You mentioned Virginia Tech, South Carolina. There's Syracuse, Tennessee, which we're obviously very interested in. LSU, Clemson, Alabama, Florida State. So some marquee opportunities for the ACC to go out of conference and to show that they're a force to be reckoned with. And we know that the Big Ten and the SEC have both, distanced themselves from the ACC. It kind of goes without saying, Ty, this is really important, right, for the ACC to have a good showing this weekend for at least a few of these teams to step up out of conference and pull off a win, yes?
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so. I mean, I heard you guys on the before the break talking a little bit about Syracuse and Tennessee and what the ramifications are of this matchup. If they win, if they don't win, but it's close, that type of thing. I mean, the ACC and the Big 12 are now put in this position because the SEC and the Big 10 have kind of strong-armed everybody. They're put in this position week in, week out, especially on weeks like this in big non-conference weeks when we tend to have these games grouped together, where they are fighting for credibility. And it might be early. In some cases, it might be late, but it's always an opportunity, I think, to showcase what the conference has in front of the College Football Playoff Committee. So this isn't to say, a number of these teams are going to even be in the conversation at the end of the year, but I do think it's important from a conference standpoint to at least show out. Like, case in point, Florida State's got a game against Alabama. Alabama is consensus a top 5 team, consensus for sure a top 10 team this year. Florida State won 2 games a year ago. It's important for them to come out firing. It's important for them, I think, to, even if they don't win, showcase that, yes, we're back on the up and up. Yes, this is a program that, if you let your guard down, they could maybe sneak up and get you. And you just want to see schools like that have true blue blood, name brand potential, step up in a key moment and really show out for the conference. So I'm going to be watching a lot of these matchups. Again, Syracuse, Tennessee is another one that I think goes without saying. Virginia Tech, South Carolina. There are more than enough opportunities for the ACC to, if not pull out an upset, at least show out in a really meaningful way and prove that they belong.
All right, let's talk Syracuse, Tennessee. The Vols are 2 touchdown favorites. They've got a really good defense. A lot of guys back on that defense. Both teams with a lot of questions and new players on offense. What do you make of this matchup? What kind of chances are you giving the Orange to keep it close / be in a position to pull off the upset?
Well, I think of this from 2 different perspectives. The first is I think Tennessee's way better, and it bothers me that pretty much at every offensive position, Syracuse might be a bit worse than they were a year ago. And I hate to say that on a Syracuse show, but that's just how I feel. It's a tough matchup. It's absolutely going to be a tough matchup. My hunch is that it's going to be basically a Tennessee home game, given that they're playing it at a neutral site closer to Tennessee. That's just sort of the way that it's going to be. The deck's going to be stacked against Syracuse. There is clearly an advantage for the Vols in this one because of the defense, even because the offense, I still think has enough back, even with the pieces that they've assembled in the offseason. Even if Tennessee takes a step back relative to where they were the last 2 seasons, they're still going to be pretty good. So I like Tennessee a lot. The only caveat that I would add is I don't want to count out Fran Brown, because Fran Brown is a culture guy. Fran Brown gets buy-in from his players. Fran Brown, I think, thrives off of opportunities like this. So while I don't think they're going to win, it wouldn't surprise me a lick if they end up covering the point spread, just because I know what Fran's all about at this point. I think we have, whether you're a Syracuse guy or not, everybody can admire a bit what he has built in very short order up there. So I am encouraged by just the way that he speaks about this program, the way that it seems guys have bought into this program. I like Steve Angeli a lot. I've seen a lot of Steve Angeli. I know he's had limited action in his college career, but I've seen all of it. I think he's a strong leader. I think he can get them organized and in a position where they're at least feisty in a game like this to start off the year. I just don't know if they have what it takes 60 minutes to go up against a defense like Tennessee, which is going to be probably one of the nation's best.
Sounds like you're, buying in on Fran Brown. We're certainly buying in on Fran Brown as well. What would be? Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to ask you. You mentioned that about Tennessee being better. Syracuse's schedule has a lot of teams that look like they're going to be better than them. They got Clemson in 3 weeks after the Tennessee game. They got SMU on the road. Do you see this talent as being able to improve to catch up with those guys in season?
That's the big question, right? I mean, I heard you guys talking about the over-under at 5.5, and it's like, while I do feel Syracuse has gotten worse at a bunch of key positions, then you layer on the schedule, which is murder. I mean, it is harder for sure than it was a year ago. And how much stock do we want to put in Fran Brown and a veteran quarterback like Steve Angeli? I don't have an answer for you. I wish I could sit here and say, I know how this is going to break down. I don't. I really don't. I mean, I tend to go over on that 5.5. I think Fran Brown will find a way to pull an upset or two. I think Syracuse will find a way to get to a bowl to win, let's say, 7 games. That's just where I'm at. I don't want to count this guy out because it just seems like whenever you've got situations like this where there's a really strong culture and the entire team is playing whistle to whistle, start to finish, you don't want to count teams like that out. They may not be as good from a talent perspective as they were a year ago, but they still have that in place, and that's enough for me to go over on their total.
You look at the ACC as a whole, I think, most people believe that Clemson is going to win the conference and is the favorite for a reason. Who's next in line in your mind? Is it Miami? Is it SMU? Is it somebody else?
I may be the only person in national college football media that's in on Pitt this year. Pitt is my dark horse. They are not going 12-0. They're not going 10-2. I've got them down as a 9-3 team, but I am all in on Pitt mainly because I like their tandem of Des Reed, Eli Holstein in the backfield. It's going to be second year for their new coordinator from a year ago, Cade Bell, came up from Western Carolina. I am hopeful. I remain hopeful that Pat Narduzzi can find a way to rebuild the pass rush, get the defense playing a little bit better than it has the last 2 seasons. But I think the schedule sets up really favorably for Pitt. I like the fact that they close out the season hosting Miami. We've never seen Miami choke a game like that before, have we? Have we on the road? We've never seen Miami choke anything like that, as I'm sure you guys know well. So, yeah, I like the setup for Pitt. I know it's kind of, maybe a bit off the deep end, but if you're asking me who do I've got playing Clemson for the ACC title, my answer is, for better or worse, the Pitt Panthers.
Well, that's great news for Syracuse because they're also on the schedule.
I know, right?
We had Andrea Adelson on yesterday, and she
She's
said the same thing too.
Yeah,
so
she's high on Pitt too. Yikes is right. You hear that the SEC is going to this, this extra conference game, the 9-game conference schedule. Do you think the ACC ultimately will do that? And I know they got to figure some things out with the math and, how does Notre Dame work into the equation and so on and so forth. But if they can figure out the math, do you assume the ACC is going to go to that extra conference game as well?
I kind of think it's headed in that direction. I think, there has been like this exercise in brand building, whether you're talking about the Big 12 or the ACC. Again, back to what we said earlier about constantly needing to prove themselves in some way, shape, or form. And I think what we could see happen, what I hope happens over the next couple of years, and we're probably going to get a taste of it this year because there's just a lot of really interesting quarterback play in the ACC. But I think the ACC is in a really interesting position where they can, just because so many programs are building up, start to define themselves a little bit more as a tough conference through and through. For a long time, it was just like the cream rises to the top and everybody else, it's like whatever. But I don't really think that's the case anymore, not in the area of the transfer portal now, where we've got so many programs that are reinvesting in their programs in the offseason and building up. Syracuse is one of them. So I'm hopeful that from their standpoint, they could see this as an opportunity to just reinforce that the ACC is a conference that deserves more than one team in the college football playoff, is a conference that, hey, if you're a school out there, you shouldn't leave. You want to be part of this because it's exciting. I think the logical next step is to go to another conference game, provided the conference continues on its trajectory now, which is, I think, incrementally getting better year in and year out.
How about another big picture question? Heisman Trophy. Who do you, if you had to make a pick right now, who you got?
Man, so the popular one is either Arch Manning or Julian Sayin, right? I don't know who you guys have. Do you guys have a pick that I should know about before I be redundant here?
I mean, I think Arch Manning is, for me, it's, he's one of the favorites for a reason. And I think we look at the ACC and we see Cade Klubnik, and Cade might end up being the best quarterback in the country this year. We'll see how that plays out. I happen to think Clemson might go undefeated this year. In the regular season. And if that's the case, he's certainly going to be, in the mix and probably be a Heisman finalist, you would assume. So I think Cade Klubnik would probably be my second choice.
Cade Klubnik is my answer. I'm glad I asked. It feels good to have a little bit of reassurance when you're making something like the Heisman, when you're making a pick like that, because obviously you have a million different options there. But I tend to agree on the Clemson front. Clemson's my preseason number one team. I think they go undefeated. I think they win the ACC. I think they make it all the way to the national championship game before they lose. But in a situation like that, Cade Klubnik's not only going to New York, he's probably winning the trophy as a whole, just because they're going to need to rely on him a lot this year. Like, part of the case that I think you're making for Clemson, if you have them going undefeated, is Cade Klubnik continues to take a step forward. There are 3 receivers out wide that he started to develop a rapport with at the end of last season. Those guys pop in some way, shape, or form. And the passing game is good enough to make up for the ground game, which right now is kind of the big question on offense. Even though I like what they have, that remains to me the biggest X factor coming into the season. So if it's going to go down the way I'm thinking, it's going to rely a lot on Cade Klubnik, and he at that point would have to be in New York. So mark me down for Klubnik. By the way, I think the odds were like maybe 9-1 on Cade Klubnik the last time I checked, which is 7-1, but regardless, they were better than I expected for a guy who's going to have a lot riding on his performance.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I guess lastly for me, college football playoff prediction. You have we had Phil Steele on. I think he said Penn State Clemson, right, Paulie? We had another national analyst say Clemson wins the whole thing. Yeah. What do you think? Who meets in the title game? Who wins it?
I've got Penn State playing against Clemson in the national championship game with Penn State coming out. Now, I don't know if you can see behind me, I've got a Beaver Avenue and Locust Lane street sign. That's where I lived at the corner of when I went to school at Penn State. So maybe I'm a little bit biased. Maybe don't take my word as gospel when it comes to this, but it's hard to go against Penn State, at least making it into the playoff and making it somewhat deep, winning a game or two because of all that they've got coming back. I mean, and Clemson's in the same boat, right? My Final Four, for what it's worth, is Penn State over Alabama, Clemson over Texas. Those 4 teams. Okay. I think you're going to see a common theme, right? A common theme across all 4 of those teams is they all have a lot back. Texas, maybe not as much as the others, but in all of those cases, all 4 cases, you're talking about teams that have more back than I think we're used to seeing right now in the transfer portal era, and that's why I'm picking them.
All right, Ty, you got anything else, Paulie?
No.
No? Okay. Great job with the interview.
Thank you. I was napping. Well,
I could tell.
Making up for the time you were late.
Ty, great stuff. Really appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the start of the college football. Oh, you do have something.
Yes, I do. Our chat, we said this last time, our chat appreciates your camera and your microphone. They normally don't say anything nice about our guests.
Crystal clear.
Yeah,
it's like he's sitting right here with us.
They said that you are the clearest and best guest.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Listen, that means that the investment in building this whole little ecosystem down here has paid off. So thank you. I appreciate it. I am thrilled as always to get an invite on and use the camera, and happy to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, they usually see the horrible things they say about Steve and I. So yeah, so for them to say
the fact they like you is
anything
high
nice
praise.
to come out of their mouth is shocking.
Do you guys need me to mediate like a peace agreement between you two?
I think so.
If you need that,
between us,
I will do that free of charge.
I think we're okay. Us in the chat, we might need you to mediate.
Okay. Whatever you need, I will play Switzerland.
We appreciate that, Ty. Good stuff. Enjoy week 1 of the college football season. We'll take a timeout here. 315-437-7644 is the number if you'd like to get involved.